At this hour, we repeat, these are the facts as we know them.
And that's when she looked in the rearview mirror.
Some technology from another dimension, another world.
You're still afraid.
I don't know what it was.
The sign of life left accept.
This will scare you.
Hello, I'm Shannon Brown, and this will scare you. This is a podcast about all things spooky and unexplained, and my guest today is comedian and TV writer Lisa Curry.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I'm so excited to talk to you. I know that you've got some great stories, and I actually, I looked into your background. It got me thinking, being a professional writer and comic, has afforded you a lot of like touring opportunities and gigs in different cities. And I was kind of curious, like, has anyone ever given you like a don't go down that road, like this theater's a little weird at night, or any kind of like spooky, warning?
You know what? Off the top of my head, I don't recall anything like that. I mean, honestly, when you're doing comedy on the road, the spookiest thing is the people you stay with. I mean,
Real
it's
interesting
truly terrifying. Some of the places I've stayed. The spookiest thing I've experienced on the road, I wasn't on the road for comedy. When I was driving out to Indiana last December. I stayed in Boonville, Iowa. And it was just exactly where I needed to be. It was like splitting up the drive into equal parts, and there was a cute little Airbnb there. And I was there with my friend Pamela Walt, who's a hilarious comedian. And it was fucking terrifying. I actually have pictures of this town in my story highlights. It was like a really small rural town, and I would say 8 out of 10 houses were abandoned.
Oh, so it was like a ghost town.
Yeah. And like not really a lot of streetlights. And there's like what looks like it was once a very cute downtown area. It looks like your typical kind of quaint 1950s downtown area where there's a barber shop and like an old lawyer's building or whatever office, and everything was shut down, and it was so scary. And we were walking past this antique store, and we were walking with my dog, who's a German Shepherd puppy, and she's not really a skittish dog. She's a German Shepherd. And we are approaching this antique shop, and she just starts going fucking nuts and like just barking and dragging me away from it. And I'm like, all my strength, I'm like, just come on, just like, we're just walking down the sidewalk. And she was like, fuck you, absolutely not. And she's like, you're just walking into the street. And then, so the Airbnb we stayed in, first, like, we pull up, and you can see pictures in like, again, in my highlights, and it's just like the spookiest lighting where there's like this weird lighting on the trees in the woods behind it. And I was like, what the fuck is that?
You're like, we wanted it to be as scary as possible for our guests.
Yes.
Not
and
welcoming is the theme.
Yeah. And you walk up to the house, and there's like, 6 steps or something that go up to the front door. And to the left of that is a dead bolted, like, just door to nothing, just a door that goes under the house. And then we're in the kitchen, and there's like what they had listed as like an office area. It was just like this extra little nook off of the kitchen, and there was like a desk and chairs. And I glanced over, and then I took a second look, and I was like, what the fuck? And there was like a trap door in the floor, but it was made to look like you couldn't see it. Like all you could see was the hinges, and it was otherwise totally flush. And it was just under this desk. And I'm like, wait a minute. So there's a door that goes under the house. Then there's a door in the floor. Then there's all these spooky doors. The bathroom doesn't have a door on it. It's just a curtain.
No.
Which is so weird.
They used up the doors on everything else.
Yeah, and then we go in the room, or Pam went in the room, and she came out, and she's like, Lisa, there's another door in here. And I was like, what? Come on. And I go in there and look, and I thought it was just like, how sometimes like some walls, just like for like design purposes will have like a wood beam across the center of the wall, like,
Yeah.
making it look country or something. I
Rustic.
don't know. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, that's just like," I was like, "That's just like reinforcement or whatever." And she's like, "No, look." And she moves the like side table, and there's another door behind that. And there was another like obvious door, but that was locked. That was padlocked in the room. And she was like, and they were like, "No pets on the bed. Like your pet has to be crated at all times." And I was like, "Fuck that. My dog is going to be sleeping in the bed with us."
Yeah.
It was so scary. In the only house on the whole block that we stayed on, like besides where we were staying, like obviously that was lit because we were there. But the only other house that had any lights on at all was this humongous house across the street that looked kind of like the house from Home Alone. Like it was this big, beautiful home with like a gate around it. And all these other houses are like cottages and like kind of dilapidated, you know?
Yeah.
And we're like, "Oh, wow, what a beautiful house." And we're like mesmerized and we're walking towards it. And then we go up, and Shannon, there was four upstairs windows and four downstairs windows, and every single one of them had a fucking Christmas tree in the window. I was like, this is even spookier.
It sounds like the house across the street was, like, rich people, and then
Mhm.
they rented out this Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Mhm.
house because they, like,
Or
hunt
they killed
humans for
everyone.
sport. Yeah. They hunted everyone in the town, and that's
Yes,
why it's a ghost town.
exactly. Exactly. And it was also weird because like the people that we there is like a little casino there, and the people we Airbnb'd from were like, "Oh yeah, we have like 10 or 12 Airbnbs in town." And I was like, "What?"
That's
I mean, it's
suspicious.
like,
Are
I
they
mean, like,
all
yeah,
a murder den? Like
yeah, it's like, how much are you making from people that gamble? They're not staying there for a month. You don't
well,
have that
and
room filled for a month. It's not a
what
tourist
city
destination.
yeah, what city was it again?
Boonville, Iowa. Stay away from it if you're listening to this. It's too spooky. I can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, you heed Lisa's warning. Do not go to Boonville, and,
Yes.
I guess, there has to be, like, some sort of, there needs to be a union or something, some sort of group that goes and investigates Airbnbs periodically to make sure they don't have, like, trap murder
Mhm.
doors and, like,
Yes.
secret passages.
Please. I've stayed at so many Airbnbs, and that one scared the hell out of me. I was like, "I'm never gonna stay there." And the people were so nice. The people who owned it were very kind, and I don't give a shit. I never wanna see them. I never wanna see that house again. I I only wanna go through that town in the daylight, and, I love spooky stuff, and I was like, "This is, you know what? This is too much for me. Thank you so much."
Well, yeah, I love spooky stuff too, unless I'm, like, part of it. Like, I like to hear stories or, like, watch a
Yeah, or, like,
movie, but
against your will, you know?
yeah. Yes. Yeah, if it's,
Like,
like,
I didn't
someone's
search spooky house.
yeah. I just wanted a nice place to crash,
Mhm,
and it's a freaky ass town. Well, I mean, kind of continuing on the theme
mhm,
of, mysterious, creepy things, I've got
mhm.
the story today is a little tinfoil hatty. It's
I
kind of a
love it.
mystery, kind of a conspiracy theory. This is the real Men in Black. Are you aware of
Ooh.
this being a potentially
No.
real thing? All right.
No, I'm not.
Well, I'll let you in on it. So first, I have to acknowledge, like, the US government did recently begin to confirm that UFOs exist. And they kind of, like,
Mhm.
rebranded things to unidentified aerial phenomena. So it's a UAP instead of a UFO. And I think it's just so that they can kind of, like, shake the
Okay.
stigma of, like, desert
Mhm.
alien people. Um, but, sake of simplicity, we'll call them UFOs. And the government acknowledgement got alien people really excited. Um, and, I mean, Earthlings have had a long standing interest in what or who lies beyond the stars. And UFOs, aliens, and the generally unexplained have been a big part of pop culture, including the hit movie series Men in Black. But
Yeah.
there may be some truth behind the movie. So,
I mean, there has to be because we just gave $1 trillion to a government contract for Space Force. So it
Yeah.
better you know what? They better be on their way to attack us to justify that purchase.
Yeah. You're like, what about our schools? Maybe they're coming here because they see how fucking dumb we are. But sure, send a gun to outer space. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, on June 27th, 1947, anniversary month of this event, Harold Dahl was on a conservation mission on the Puget Sound near Washington's Maury Island when he realized 6 donut shaped objects were hovering about a half a mile above his boat. One of them suddenly fell about 1,500 feet, and then it rained metallic debris, which
What?
in some reports, yeah, just like whoop, drop down, stop, and then metal. And he said it was like a white metal that looked like newspaper kind of like floating down. And in the boat was Harold's kid, his 15-year-old son, and their dog. And the metal hit the son, injuring his arm, and it hit the dog and killed it. Which,
No.
yeah. I mean, alien technology, if you ask me. How can newspaper injure and maim? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I would be on the next flight to outer space if something killed my dog. I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Listen, motherfuckers,
Whose ass do I have to kick?
I'm coming for you."
Yeah. Do you have asses? We don't know, but you get the gist of it. Yeah, so now this event is known as the Maury Island incident in UFO circles, and the next morning, Harold was visited by a man in a black suit. They went to a nearby diner where the man was able to tell Harold exactly what he had experienced in great detail, and then said, "What I have said to you is proof that I know a great deal more about this experience of yours than you will ever want to believe." And then he was told never to speak of the incident, and if he did, bad things would happen.
What?
Yeah. So reports of encounters with the men in black would keep coming, with historian Aaron Gulyas stating that during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, UFO conspiracy theorists would incorporate the men in black into their increasingly complex and paranoid visions. So, I mean, my entire approach to paranormal and unexplained stuff is that I wasn't there, so who am I to tell someone they're lying or they didn't see a ghost or an alien or whatever?
Mhm.
But also, once something enters like a folklore status, people do kind of start to see what they want to
Mhm.
see. So, who knows? Another example of this type of issue can be found in UFOologist, which is what they call people who study
Ooh, okay.
UFOs and those kind of events. Uh, oh, do you have?
I just remembered an anecdote I have for you after this
Oh,
that has an extra story on top of my story. Sorry, I don't want to
no.
interrupt. I want to hear the rest of the story.
Okay. So UFOologist John Keel had a 1975 book called The Mothman Prophecies, which,
Mhm.
we all know the story, the movie, yada, yada, yada. But he describes a late night outing in 1967 in rural West Virginia, where he himself was mistaken for a man in black while he was just trying to find a phone to call a tow truck. So, like, in the middle of
Ooh.
this hysteria of, like,
Mhm.
alien stuff, it's kind of like he's in the prime area for it. And Virginia's where, like, people are already saying that they were seeing Mothman around. And he's just like, I am just trying to write a book. I am not here to zap any memories.
Mhm.
Um, However, on the other side of things, a more recent story involves pop punk royalty Tom DeLonge. So he, the former member of Blink 182, for anyone who I don't even know what
Mhm.
my demographic is, I'm assuming they're all millennials who know who Tom DeLonge is, but was in Blink 182, hot dang. He's always had this long time interest in aliens and UFOs, and he actually founded the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science in 2017. Their
Yep.
main focus is investigating and improving the existence of life in space. So Tom
Oh,
DeLonge has
okay.
this group. Their
Mhm.
team is made up of people that are former CIA agents,
Mhm.
scientists, lawyers, and business people, which I don't know, it seems more legit if you have like former CIA people on your side. Um and he did this 2015 Paper Magazine interview that revealed this interaction that might sway some people to one side or the other on the Men in Black. So this is a big quote from Tom DeLonge. He said, "To give you an example, one time I remember bringing up a very specific craft," he means a spaceship, "that
Mhm.
he believes we humans are building in secret to emulate the phenomenon that our government has been observing for decades." So Tom DeLonge starts talking about the craft and its magnetic slide system and how it displaces over 89%
Ooh,
of the mass of
okay.
the ship, how it ionizes the engine, how it glows. I was just like, how the fuck do you know all this? So he goes through this like whole shebang describing this thing. And the engineer looks at him, this 70-year-old guy, and says,
Mhm.
"You better be real fucking careful about what you're talking about." And Tom DeLonge goes, "Okay, so I'm close." And the engineer goes, "I'm not fucking kidding with you. You better be really fucking careful." And the next
Ooh,
day, he calls Tom DeLonge and says, "I've had calls about you. If someone comes and asks you to get in their car, don't fucking get in the car."
what?
Which is
What?
very ominous, I mean, as two women, I'm not getting in
Yeah.
any car that anyone tells me to get
No.
in,
No.
period.
Mm-mm.
But when, the old kind of crotchety, "Don't go down that road" guy tells you not to go down that
Yeah,
road,
that's
it's a
terrifying.
little
But then,
freaky.
you know what? There's also part of me that's like, I gotta go down that road, man. I gotta see what it's all about.
Yeah, it's like,
Like, you've
well,
gone this far.
right.
Tom,
I
what are
mean,
you doing? You're not going
you
to Blink
founded this whole
182? You're
thing.
not going back? Yeah.
Yeah. They
Get
already
in the
got a
car,
guy
Tom.
filling in for you. Hop in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
so hopefully one day we'll find out a little bit more, but so far he has not gotten in that car. And probably the creepiest thing to me is the men in black are typically described as wearing black suits and being expressionless. Some say that they come
Mhm.
across as cold and in some cases sinister. They primarily interact with people who claim to have seen a UFO or those who study UFOs, and they'll tell those people something along the lines of, "We're from a secret organization," and they'll refer to each other as numbers instead of names.
Oh, okay. I feel like that would be really confusing for me because names have a certain rhythm to them where I'm like, I fucking would unless you were like a number that really stuck out. If we're just doing like 1 through 10, I'm sorry. I'm never fucking gonna remember your number.
Yeah, I mean, and also, like, this information was, like, easily found on the internet. I feel like any of those, like, I can't remember what it was called. It was, like, that douchey, like, art of, like, seduction, like, those, like, peacocking type of
Mhm.
guys. I feel like it'd be
Mhm.
very easy for, like, 2 douchebags just to be like, "We already know what they're looking for.
Mhm.
I'll be 46, you're number 3. Let's just, like, go screw with these people."
Yeah, like if you're good at improv, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So the real Men in Black usually threaten and intimidate the UFO people into staying quiet about their experiences or findings. They've even threatened like people's spouses and families and pets. And Dan
Whoa.
Aykroyd, famous Ghostbuster, is known for his
Yes.
passion for the paranormal. And in 2002, he was working on a documentary for the Sci Fi Channel with a lot of these like big name people in UFO
Mhm.
studies, ufology. And they had shot 8 episodes of this series that was close to going to air. But one day after filming, Dan steps outside for a smoke and a phone call. He turns his head and looks out onto 42nd Street in New York, and he notices a black SUV with a tall man dressed in all black giving him a dirty look. Does like a quick double take, but within that
Mhm.
second, the car had vanished. 2 hours later, Aykroyd and the cast were told the show had been canceled completely. It would never air. They were never
What?
given a reason. So, like, I mean, maybe it's a coincidence. Like, sometimes stuff just doesn't go. But, like, they're literally, he's like steps, like, offset, goes back, and they're
Yeah.
like, it's done. Everything's
You
like,
know what though?
burn it
I'm
all.
sorry. I'm gonna sound really kooky. This is not a conspiracy. This is 100% real. Um, there is, and I can't remember what it's called, but there is there's a department that exists within the Department of Defense, Air Force, Marines. It's in every branch of the military, and it's called like the Entertainment Task Force or something. That's definitely not the name of it, but it's something like that. And the entire purpose of this of this thing is for people in the like people it's a government position, right? So
Mhm.
the people that work in that wish I could remember that I wasn't planning on talking about this, so I didn't even think to
No, no problem.
make this make sense. But the people that work in it work for the government, right? And their
Okay.
entire job is to be a liaison with movie studios and producers and stuff. And what they do is they review scripts and make sure like that the government isn't being portrayed in a bad light.
What?
And so they'll go through and they'll cross things out, and especially has to do with things that have to do with like the Secret Service or the CIA or any kind of like movies or shows or material that has to do with that. There
Wow.
is there we our taxes pay for a liaison that meets with producers and is like, absolutely not, you can't say that, you can't tell them we do that, like, and just goes through everything. Is that the craziest shit?
Okay. First, I thought we were a little bit more liberal as a country, especially seeing like what does go to air about like our
Mhm,
government. But also
mhm.
like I feel like a lot of people don't know
The
that
Entertainment
they're
Liaison Office, that's what it's called. Sorry, I had
no.
to just look that up really quick. Entertainment Media Liaison Office, and you can look it up, you type that in, and it'll take you to the friggin' Marines website. There, and the Air Force branch is currently hiring. I looked that up and I was like, "Ooh, can I work there?" But you have to have, like, military experience.
I am stunned.
Yeah, right? So I don't think all of that to say, like, for anybody listening and it's like, "Ooh, it's just a coincidence." It's like, I don't know, is it? Or is that literally the entertainment media liaison office that exists in plain sight?
Yeah, well, and also, like a complete side note, I feel like so many people are interested in the entertainment industry, like being a writer
Mhm.
or performer. But if you're a narc, there are so many job opportunities for you. Like,
Yes.
if you have like you can't write, you can't sing or act
Mhm,
anything, but you can rat someone out, there are a lot of jobs. Because 'cause I've heard
mhm,
of so many different positions of, checking out names for this or that, different legal things, even just like what's considered offensive or not offensive and to
mhm.
who. Narc your way to the top, guys. You can do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
So,
I'm ready for it. If somebody has any opportunities for me, let me know. I'm ready.
yeah, let's
Mhm.
get everyone in the entertainment industry staffed and working and, back on track, whether
Yeah.
it be, creative or narc, who cares? But I the last, incident I have for you today took place on October 14th,
Mhm,
2008, near Niagara Falls, when a hotel manager named Shane Sovar was with a security guard at the hotel, and they saw a large triangular UFO. So, a group called the Aerial Phenomena Investigations Team looked into it. 3 weeks later, two unknown men in black suits visited the hotel, frightening the hotel staff.
Ooh,
They were looking for Shane and the security guard, but they weren't there. And later, Shane reviewed the security camera footage, which does show two men in what I would describe as like 1940s suits, like black
mhm,
suits with an overcoat and like, the fancy hat. And the hotel staff described them as looking identical with extremely pale skin, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and abnormally
what?
large eyes. Yeah. So, like, that's a thing too. Like, they are known for being like, imagine like Mr. Clean, but like no facial hair. And they're extremely pale. Like, I'm basically translucent. They're like sheet paper white, and they are said to have ruby red lips,
That's
which is
fucking
like,
weird.
what in the fuck? So, the video is out there. I'll see if I can maybe post it to like the Instagram. But it is weird. Like, if you didn't have any
Mhm,
context for the story, you'd just be like, "Oh, I don't know, it's like two weird
mhm,
brothers going into a hotel or something." But with the context, it is a little creepy.
mhm.
Um, so I have a question for you, Lisa. If
Yes.
you yourself are running an elite cover-up agency,
Uh-huh.
what would you specialize in covering up?
Ooh.
Yeah, like Men in Black, they're trying to cover up the UFO stuff.
Oh gosh, it's hard to say because our government already covers up so much bullshit.
I know.
Um, Oh man, I think I would cover up the financial like financial crimes of people who are poor and struggling cuz fuck off. We don't need to punish them.
Yeah, almost
Is
like a
that too
reverse. No, it's like a
too
reverse
sincere?
credit score. Like
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
just
And credit scores have only
everything's.
been around since like the 70s anyway, so it's a scam. It's all a
It
scam.
is. I mean, our country is a scam, but which is
It's
just
all of
making me
it.
sound more and more like a tinfoil hat desert person because I'm just like, yeah, man, narcs and scams, but a lot
Yeah.
of stuff is a scam. So that would be great.
Mhm,
I would gladly participate in a credit score cover up and a debt cover up.
mhm,
That would be awesome.
mhm.
So you also came prepared with your experience today, and you
Yes.
said
Okay.
that you
So
even
wait,
have
I have a
photos.
paranormal experience, but I also wanted to tell you about because you were talking about like alien abductions and stuff,
Mhm.
and I have to tell you, and this is dead ass serious. When I was in high school, I went to high school at Crown Point High School in Crown Point, Indiana. So, and I'm saying this because your listeners can look this shit up and they can absolutely verify this information. So, I went to Crown Point High School and I had for you know how you do algebra and then geometry and then algebra 2 or advanced algebra or whatever the fuck you call it. I don't know why they split it up. I don't know why we're doing algebra twice. It doesn't make sense. It's not real shit. Like
Because there's not
geometry is
enough
real
stuff
life.
to learn.
Yeah, it's like, get the fuck out of here. I don't need algebra. I don't like it in the first place because it's so stupid,
Mhm.
and it doesn't apply to anything in your life. Anyway, I'm done yelling about algebra. So my algebra teacher was this guy, Mr. Johnson, and I can't remember his first name. But my same friend Pamela that I was on the road with, I was telling her the story, and she looked him up, and he's linked to all this like alien abduction stuff. So if you look up like
What?
he was also the basketball coach. So if you look up like Crown Point High School, Mr. Johnson, like math teacher, basketball coach, whatever, you'll find his name, his first name, and then you can find his like alien abduction stuff. So when I was in his algebra 2 class and when we got when you start studying like imaginary numbers, we get to that part of like the syllabus or whatever, and he puts up it's so dramatic, Shannon, so dramatic. He's at the chalkboard, he writes the formula for imaginary numbers, and then he turns to the class and like has his arm down at his side, like puts the chalk down, and he's like, this is the formula for imaginary numbers. And we're like, okay. And he's like, it is also the formula that aliens used to take me into the fourth dimension. And I was like, what the fuck? And I burst out laughing. Like I was crying. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm hysterical. And he goes, you think this is a joke, Miss Curry? You think this is a joke? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, yes.
Also, you're
And
screaming at a teenage girl about aliens. What are you
yes.
doing?
And the girl, I will never forget. And I don't like have a beef with her or anything, but I'll just never forget this. This girl, Heather Forney, she sat in front of me and she was like one of the cool girls. She was always like the hottest girl in school or whatever. And she turned around and she looked at me and she goes, you were such a bitch, Lisa. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Are we all in the same fucking room right now? Like, what is this? And then he like went on to explain that he had been abducted multiple times, and then he showed us like these alien abduction books he had on his desk, and like he had always had up on the wall behind his desk, he had this like black piece of construction paper with like a white chalk drawing on it, and he's like, my son drew this and I think he's been abducted too because this looks like the beings. And I was like, what the fuck? And he tells us that they took him to the fourth dimension through a porthole located behind his dresser. And I was like, am I hallucinating this entire lesson today? What is going on? And he's like talking about how he goes to these conventions in New York. It was so crazy. And I went down to my counselor's office and I was like, I need to transfer classes. And they're like, why? And I was like, Mr. Johnson's talking about fucking alien abductions. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And the counselor would not believe me and would not let me transfer classes. So I just dropped math. I was like, well, I've already fulfilled my math requirements. You only need geometry to graduate high school. So I was like, well, then fine. I'm fucking done with math then. Fuck you. Because I was just so
Wow.
angry about it. Um,
That is so wild. I went to Catholic school, so I just had, like, perverts and,
It's
as
crazy. Yeah, I mean,
teachers,
this is
but
way better than, like, being diddled by a teacher. I'll take this any day. And
Yeah.
now that I'm an adult and like, really into spooky stuff, I'm like, "Man, what I wouldn't give to have a conversation with him about it," you know?
Yeah, and, like, thinking, like, obviously, in putting myself in your shoes, like, yeah, like, what kind of reaction do you expect with,
What do you
like, a bunch
expect
of
from
kids?
teenagers? Also,
Yeah.
the fact that I think the rest of the class, like, revered him because he was the basketball coach, and I was unimpressed by that. I
Yeah.
mean, but I love teachers, guys. But I don't respect you if you're an algebra teacher because what are you doing with your life?
But yeah, I mean, I feel like part of me feels sympathetic for him, like,
Mhm.
maybe he felt like literally no one was listening, so in his mind, he was like, "I
Yeah,
know who will listen, high schoolers, and not like, I know
yeah.
who will listen and not ridicule me. It's high
Mhm.
schoolers,
It's
certainly."
you know what's also funny is, like, I thought he was cuckoo because I remember the only other thing I remember none of the math he taught us, but the only other thing I remember him saying was, I was in high school while the election was coming up, what fucking year was it that Bush got elected? 2000? The 2000 election was coming up, so I'm 15 years old, I'm very young, I remember him, like, railing about Bush, and this is before I knew enough to know that how fucking evil the Bush family is,
Yeah.
and just Republicans. I'm just gonna alienate, half of the crowd, half of your
Uh,
listeners.
no, I feel like people who listen to anything I do, like, I don't think they're
Probably
Republicans.
lean left.
Yeah, they're probably
Um,
a little
yeah.
left, a little underground
Yeah.
type of people.
Yeah, they're mole people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I so this was, like, before I really understood anything about Bush or the Bush family or whatever, and he was going on and on about, like, how this is months before the election. This is probably, like, a year before the election, actually, and he's like, he's like, "I'm just gonna write my dog in." He goes, "It doesn't fucking matter." He goes, "Bush is gonna win anyway. They're giving it to him. It's not a real election." And I'm like, "This guy's out of his fucking mind." And then George Bush won, and now also looking back at what happened with the recounts and stuff, I'm like, "Oh god, he was fucking right. He
Yeah.
was right on the money."
Yeah. Like, being young,
Yeah.
I mean, at least, like, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and it's also so like, I
Mhm.
mean, there's pockets of somewhat conservative places, and I lived in one of them, and,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, just seeing, like, on TV, like, everything like, feminism was bad, conspiracy theories were,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
cuckoo bananas and things like that. But now as an adult, I'm definitely becoming, like, a crunchy hippie type person where I'm like,
Yeah.
"They're fucking right, man. Sometimes conspiracy theories, they ain't conspiracies or theories, it's just true." Like, it's really out
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. Absolutely. I fully believe that, especially, like, when you are able to look back on things like, w in like the Salem witch trials, for example. It's like at the time, people really did think they were witches,
Mhm.
and so they burned people alive. And now all these years later, we're like, oh, they weren't witches. So it's like, with the benefit of hindsight, we see how many times the government has, like, lied to us, or we've been tricked, or we've been told that we were crazy or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
just
yeah.
like the suppression of
Mhm.
non-wealthy white people.
Yeah, yeah,
Like the
exactly.
witch trials started out because of a black enslaved woman, and
Hmm.
just like so many things have been kicked off because of just like essentially just trying to squash the little guy. And
Yeah,
especially when you position like people who believe in the paranormal, they're usually seen as like cuckoo bananas unless it's like on the Travel Channel and then that guy's like
yeah.
badass, but like, your uncle who talks
Hmm.
about whatever he saw is like, the weirdo. So,
Yeah, it's like, "Oh,
who
he's
knows?
he's high on Miller Lite," or whatever the hell.
Which, I mean, good for him. That dude's been through some shit.
Yeah, of course, of course. Alright, so you want me to tell you my paranormal experience now?
Yes.
This is for anyone listening, please know I have done everything I possibly could to verify that this is absolutely not a paranormal experience. I have thought of every fucking scenario. I've told this story 100 times, and I just come to the same consensus every time. This is very weird. And I have pictures that I'm going to text to Shannon after this. And so there's proof of this. There's proof that this fucking happened. Okay. So this was 2017. And yeah, it was 2017 because I was with my ex. And it's like June. And I was working at 2 restaurants at the time. I was working at one in West Hollywood during the week, and then I was working at another downtown LA Saturdays and Sundays. And Saturdays and Sundays, I worked brunch. I worked the early shift, and I would get there, and it would just be like the cooks in the back, and then me. And this is going to be a detail for later, right? So this is not, the paranormal experience did not happen at the restaurant, but this will tie things in later. So I'm leaving for work. The restaurant in West Hollywood, I always worked at like 7 a.m. I worked the breakfast shift.
Geez.
And yeah. Ugh. So I would get up at like 6:15, and I don't like to go. I don't like to go about my day on little sleep. I don't. If I have to work at 7 a.m., I'm going to be in bed by 10 p.m. and I'm going to be stone fucking sober. So it was a day where I had to work at 7 a.m. So the night before, I'd had like a regular night. I don't know if I did any spots or whatever, but I was in bed by 10 and completely sober. And I do smoke a little weed at night, but like sober, like I wasn't drunk, you know?
Yeah.
LA sober. So I go to sleep. I wake up at 6:15. I have like, in my bed, I had like sheets. There was like this thin blue, like dark blue and light blue, it's like kind of swirls blanket. And then this purple kind of gauzy blanket on top of that. So there's the 3 blankets. And I had my bed, I was in a studio, and I had my bed by the window, and my bed was like, if you could picture, my bed is alongside the windows, but away from the window. Like the headboard was up against a wall that was perpendicular to the window.
Okay.
So like, and I had just rearranged my apartment, so I didn't have like a side table or anything. It's just my 2 mattresses on a frame up against the wall, and then there's like maybe 1.5 feet of space between the edge of like the long side of my mattress and the windows. And I had hardwood floors, no plants at the time. I had no pets. I had no air conditioning. It was June. It was like a sunny, light day. And if you know Southern California, it rains like 2 days a year, and it's not ever in June. Okay. So, and I always had, since I lived in that building, unless it was like the dead of winter, I always had my windows open all day and night. I was on the 2nd floor. And I'd always have my windows open, and there was like, I had sheer white curtains in front of the windows that went all the way down to the floor. They touched the floor. And then right outside my window was just kind of a little cement alleyway between my building and the other building. So there's no plants out there. There's nothing. Anyway, so whatever morning this is in June, I wake up at 6:15. I like, pull my covers to the side. I don't make my bed because it's 6:15. Okay. I only make my bed when I get out of bed at noon, and then it's still a crapshoot. So I get out of bed, I get ready for work. I leave for work at like 6:40, totally normal morning, totally normal and regular. I go to work. I have a regular work day. I come home. I was wiped out. So I like go and I lay down on the couch for a little while in my work uniform. And the couch was on the other side of the room. So the couch was nowhere near my bed. So I just like crash on the couch for a little bit. Wake up, go get changed. I still am not going anywhere near my bed. Like I have to walk past my bed to go to my closet, but like I'm not paying any mind to my bed.
Yeah.
So right now it's like I get home at like 2:33. I go, I change, I leave, I run some errands. I get home at like 5. So by now I've been out of my bed for 11 hours, right?
Mhm.
These are all important details. So I come home at like 5. I'm on the phone. I have my phone to my ear, and I do that thing like I walk in my house and I kind of like I kind of like pace when I'm on the phone, and
Mhm.
no matter who I'm on the phone with or what the subject is, I like pace around, and I'm wandering around, and then I walk over to my bed, and my bed was like up on those like plastic risers you get at Target because I like my bed to be high,
Yeah.
like I'm some kind of fucking Princess in the Pea scenario, you know? I'm
We
like, I
all
just
like to
want my
feel
bed as
tiny.
close to the ceiling. Yes, of course. I'm like, I want to climb into bed like I'm a child, which is, you know, a different podcast altogether. Uh, so I walk over to my bed, and I'm on the phone, and I do that like kind of you know how like there's like that kind of quintessential image of like a teenager on a bed, like on the phone, like laying on their stomach, kicking their legs up.
Yeah.
Like I pretty much start to do that. Like I'm standing next to my bed. I don't know. I have my phone to my ear. Like any of your listeners can see this. None of them can. I'm demonstrating. So I have my phone in my hand. I walk over to my bed, standing next to it. I bend over to like put my torso and my forearms on my bed while I'm talking, and my bed is fucking soaking wet.
Ugh,
Soaked.
I just got
Soaked.
chills all the way down my back.
Dude, I was like, I don't remember who I was on the phone with, but I was like, let me call you back. And I just hang up, and I stand up and I look, and it looks like somebody dumped a fucking gallon of water on my bed. My bed is soaked. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm going through every possible scenario in my head. I'm like, I've never wet the bed in my life, not when I was a kid, let alone when I'm a sober adult.
Yeah.
I I didn't have again, I said I didn't have a nightstand, so there's not like I had a glass of water on my vanity, but my vanity was I had a walk-in closet, and the vanity was inside the walk-in closet. So
Well, it also
it's
isn't
nowhere near my
enough
bed.
water in a glass to
No.
do all
No,
that.
there's also not enough water in my bladder, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like you would
So
know if you
mhm,
fully soaked your mattress with urine
would
and
for
then
sure
got up
know.
and went to work. Like, that's a shower situation
Would
for
for
sure.
sure know. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I hope. I hope.
Yeah.
So then I'm like crawling around on the floor because I have hardwood floors, and I'm like, the floor bone dry. And I'm like, what the fuck? By the way, my pillows were dry. So just like the bed, like the blankets and the sheets are wet. I walk around my bed by the window, the curtains, bone dry. The window, bone dry. It's a dry day. At this point, it hasn't rained in months.
Mhm.
There's no there's no I'm looking into the alley. There's no like there there would be absolutely no reason for the 7 years I lived there. There was never a gardener spraying water in the alley. But
Yeah.
just in case, just to rule it out, I look. There's nothing. I'm under the bed. There's nothing, and I'm like, is there like somehow a leak in the ceiling? Which why would there be? It hadn't fucking rained. I get up on my bed and I touch the ceiling. The ceiling is fucking bone dry. Here's what's even
No,
creepier.
I was really hoping this was just gonna be a
Hmm.
joke and you'd be like, "Oh, the
No,
neighbor's, like,
no,
tub flooded or whatever."
no. And
Oh.
there and nobody lived above me either. It's just a flat like asphalt
Oh,
ceiling. Yeah.
gross.
So here's what's weirder. So first of all, so I'm like two people have keys to my place. My cousin DeJay and my friend Emily. I text each of them and I was like, and by the way, neither of them ever, not once ever came over to my place when I was gone. And
Mhm.
there's no reason they would. But just to rule it out, I text Emily. She's in New York. I was like, "Hey, did you swing by my place by any chance? You know, today?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm in New York. What's up?" And I was like, "Never mind." I text my cousin, and she's like, "Oh, I've been at work all day. What's up?" And I'm like, "Never mind." Um, and
So
here's
you just then peeing? Like, I would just be peeing my pants then. I'd be like, "What in
I'm
the fuck
just like,
just happened in
what in the? Well, I think I'm not
such an
freaking out.
intimate place too?"
Hmm. Well, I'm at this point, I'm not freaking out that much yet. I think because it's daylight and because I'm so determined to find out, like, get to the bottom of this. And I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out, no problem, you know. And my cousin, who was at work all day and like she lived up the road from me at the time, or she still lives up the road from where I lived. She, by the way, this building is over 100 years old. It was built by Paramount as actor housing in like the 1920s. So barely, or it's maybe 100 years old, or it was built in the late, it was probably built in 1918. Okay. I'm like, okay, like somebody's arguing with me. I'm like, get off my ass.
I
And the
believe
listeners
you.
are like, we're not arguing with you. It's actually a kind of a famous building. Adam Lambert used to live there. It's weird. It has like
Oh,
all these Egyptian hieroglyphs on it. It's 747 Wilcox Avenue. I don't live there anymore, so I'll tell you that. Um, it's a really cool, like funky building. And by the way, in the 7 years I lived there, never before or since did I ever have a paranormal experience. And my unit out of 20 units, mine was the only one that had access to the fucking attic for some reason. So that's another weird thing. And I looked in the attic my last day that I lived there, and there was just a pine cone up there. I was so disappointed
but that's
in
also
myself for not
weird.
putting it dollop. It was, yeah,
Why is
super
there a
weird.
single pine cone up there?
Why do I have access, and why am I not the building manager if I have access to the goddamn attic?
I feel
Like
like
what's
all of your stories, like, it just
Mhm.
goes to show, like, you should have been committing more crimes. Like, you could have gotten
Should
away with
have.
so many
Yes,
more crimes and just, like,
absolutely.
sneaky doings you could have done.
Mhm. Mhm. So my cousin that after I texted my cousin, I ruled out my friend Emily first because I was like, Emily for sure wasn't here, but I want to make sure. And my cousin lives up the road, so I was like, maybe she came by. Although I can't imagine her just like dousing my bed with water and then being like, "Peace," like that would make no sense.
Yeah, it's not even a
So
prank, it's just a rude thing.
right. She's also like to add extra context, I went out of town for 3 weeks once and I asked her to check my mail and she's like, "Yeah, no problem. You live right up the road. I'll be over there." Cuz she's kind of a stoner, a lot of a stoner. And then she just never checked my mail. So she's not so like when I needed her to come and I'm not saying this to like drag her, but when I asked her to come to my apartment, she did not. So I'm
Yeah.
saying there's no reason she's not just popping in to splash water on my bed. She's also like 50. She has better things to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think. So when I text her and I'm like, "Oh, you're at work." Oh, I was like, "Oh, I have a weird story." And she's into like she likes spooky stuff. So I call her and she lived in a house and I'm the cousin I'm staying with right now in Indiana is her little sister, and the older cousin lived in a house in East Chicago for years that they both swear was fucking haunted as shit. Like they would hear voices and doors would slam and all kinds of weirds. Or like one time they came downstairs into the kitchen and all the cabinet doors were open and they were like, "We need to
No.
leave." It was like a really hostile energy.
Oh
So
god.
yeah, really spooky stuff. So I call her and I tell her, I'm like, "I just came home and my bed is soaked. This is so weird." And she's like, "Well, do you feel a bad energy in the room?" And I was like, "I don't at all." And she's like, "Well, wash all your sheets and blankets and whatever and reset it and, talk out loud to whatever spirit might be in the room and just like let them know like you're freaked out and please don't do this and whatever." And I'm like, "Okay." I go to wash my blankets, Shannon. And my blankets, I had made my bed, so they're just kind of bunched up. So I pull my blankets off, right? I pull the fitted sheet off. The fitted sheet soaking wet. I pull
Mhm.
it off. The mattress pad, bone dry.
What?
The mattress, bone dry. Does this make any fucking sense? This makes no sense. If the fitted sheet that I've been laying on is fucking soaked, why? Why? Sorry, I'm pounding on this. Why would the
No, it's
mattress pad and the mattress be dry? And I'm like, so I pull that off and I feel that and I was like, what the fuck? I'm washing my blankets. I'm talking to a friend on the phone and I'm like telling them, I'm like, "You're not going to believe what happened. This is so weird." So I took pictures of the blankets. They're so wet. You can see how wet they are. That's how wet they are. So I'm talking to a friend. Here's where the downtown restaurant and me being the only person out front and whatever. Here's where this all comes into play. This is really sad. Sorry. I'm trying not to laugh because now that I said it's sad, now my body's like, start laughing. So I'm talking to a friend and telling them, and they're like, "Well, has anything like weird happened in the last week? Or like, is there any reason like some spirit would have visited you?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, last week, I was setting up the restaurant downtown. I'm the only person in the restaurant, right? And it's like it was a place. It was called Ledlow, and it was the same guy
Oh.
that owned like Baco Mercat and like all these other like dope restaurants. Ledlow didn't
Mhm.
last very long, unfortunately. It was incredible, and I loved that chef. It was a great. It was like the best of all the restaurants I've ever worked at. It was the best. I'm just saying all of this because if he opens it, I think I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. Joseph Quintano, whatever. If he opens another restaurant, go there. He's amazing and so kind. So it was on the corner of Fourth and Spring, I believe, or Fourth and Main downtown. Whatever it is, it's on the fucking corner, and it has floor to ceiling windows that are sealed shut. You know, they're not like you can't crack them open or whatever. It's just the window.
Yeah.
And the front door is shut and locked. And I'm the only one in the dining room. I'm setting up. I'm listening to an audiobook. Ironically, the audiobook I'm listening to is How the Body Keeps the Score or something like that, about how like